and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer. My guest today, I believe, is a healer in every sense of the word. He's worked very closely with one of my own family members, and it was the first time that I'd actually seen this family member of mine after having worked with this person, that he was actually more himself. So I'm a firm believer in what he does. He is the founder of the Natural Medicine and Nutrition Clinic, and he is here today to share his story with us. Ben Latto O'Brien, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our chat, Ben. I know you have an incredible story, and I cannot wait for you to share it with our listeners.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Ben, perhaps you could take us back. Where did that all start?
Well, I mean, medicine's always been in my family. So both my grandparents were medical doctors, GPs, and three of my four uncles are medical doctors too. So that kind of vein ran down the family. And I guess growing up, I was exposed to a lot of that sort of thing. And actually, it wasn't really my cup of tea at all. I was not that interested in health and healing because I was bombarded with it 24/7. So when I finished school, I didn't do terribly well at school. I wasn't terribly academic. I was very good with my hands, but I wasn't that interested in, maths and science and the academia world. So I left school and became a panel beater and spray painter. So did basically the complete opposite, and the family were a bit horrified. But that was what my journey was, and that's, I wasn't going to go into medicine. I wasn't interested in it. And so I took a kind of a very roundabout way of getting there. And so I did an apprenticeship, and that went for 4 years. And I never really worked in the trade again. But what it taught me was an awful lot of life skills. It taught me how to use tools. I like to use my hands. I like to cut up cars and paint them and panel beat and do all that sort of thing. But long term, that was not going to be a good thing for the health too. So I was kind of quite aware that wasn't probably going to be my future. You lead kind of when you're trying to find your way in life, you quite often have a winding path. Yeah. So it didn't start with medicine. I just kind of ended up there eventually.
And so walk us through. So you qualified in your spray painting job, and then was there something that triggered this path down the road of natural medicine for you?
Yeah, it was a huge and very traumatic experience, actually. So what happened was, when I was 25, I was diagnosed with a severely dilated ascending aorta, which is the main blood vessel that comes out of your heart. And in my family, we have an unusual genetic condition called Marfan syndrome. So it's a connective tissue disorder, Marfan's, Marfans, if anyone's interested. And basically what it means is all the connective tissue, the structural tissue of your body is not strong. So people with Marfan suffer from all kinds of different weird and wonderful symptoms. But the fatal aspect of that is the connective tissue that surrounds your aorta, your heart, is very, very weak. And so your normal aorta is supposed to be about the diameter of your thumb, about 2.5 centimeters. And I had an echocardiogram done, which is a heart X-ray, and they saw that my aorta was 6.9 centimeters. So they panicked quite a lot and basically gave me 3 months to live. And because what happens is that as your aorta gets bigger and bigger, it dilates, the walls get thinner and thinner. And basically you have what's called aortic dissection, which basically means your heart bursts and you don't have any symptoms, right? So the first symptom is that you die. That tends to be what happens with Marfan. So, it was quite a severe shock for me to not have any symptoms, think that everything was relatively okay. I mean, we knew we had this condition in the family, but no one really knew what it meant. And it's kind of ironic and a bit disturbing that I'm from this huge medical family and no one picked it. No one understood it. It's not really that common a condition. So, basically I went from having nothing wrong with me at all to suddenly them going, okay, you must go for immediate open heart surgery. And this was major stuff. This was in 2005. And so it's not keyhole surgery where they can just slip in and do their thing and get out. It was almost 10 hours of theatre, actually. So they Yeah, if you have the surgery, you may die, and if you don't have it, you'll definitely die. So it wasn't a
Oh my
really good
God.
position to be in. So I went to quite a lot of cardiologists and got some different opinions, but they kept telling me the same thing, that if you don't have this quite severe medical procedure, you're not going to be here for very long. So
Yeah.
that was not what you want to hear at 25. So
Interrupt for a second. I would just love for you to share, like, you've gone from, being living a normal life as such. You literally have a grenade dropped on your life. Would you mind to share with us what exactly went through your mind at that stage? Was it kind of like you went into action mode? Were you overwhelmed? Was there any
I
like
was just in horror.
you?
I was just in shock and horror, and I was in a lot of denial too, because
Yeah.
the fact that you don't really have any symptoms, and yet suddenly you have this kind of terminal diagnosis of you must do this or this is going to happen. I just thought it was very unfair and very unjust. And this actually only came about because my sister was on a journey to try and work out how does she have children without passing on this condition.
I
So
see.
she was already gone down this path. And as part of the research, we all had to give some DNA
Hmm.
and get examined. So I had an older brother, and she's my older sister. I'm the youngest, and my mother also, and my father. They all
Hmm.
gave DNA, and so they're trying to work out exactly on the gene where the defect is. If they can find where the defect is on the gene, then you can screen, because you don't. Marfan's is like a 50% chance that you'll pass it on. But if you know which part of the cell is being affected, or where the defect is on the gene, you can disregard the eggs in a female or the sperm in male, and you
Hmm.
can use the viable biology that basically isn't going to pass on the condition. So that's how it came about. So I was very angry at her when sort of it was kind of one step after another. First of all, I was doing the testing. That was fine. I was okay with doing a cheek swab and sending the stuff away. But then
Before.
as part of the, sorry?
This was before you were aware, did you say?
Yes, this was completely before. This is what led up to it. So,
Oh.
and then as a part of so she was seeing a genetic specialist and a cardiologist in Melbourne, and so
Mm.
all the results came in, because my sister was living in Melbourne working on radio at the time. The results came in. She was sitting with this cardiologist, a doctor called Anu Agarwal, and Dr. Agarwal said to my sister, "I've just seen your brother's results. When did your brother die?"
Oh my
And she's
goodness.
like, "What? What do you mean? He's not dead. He's in Perth." And she's like, "Well, he needs to immediately go and get tested, because I think he's in a serious amount of trouble." And so that's kind of what led me to then go. But I was very angry, and I was very reluctant. It was just
Mm.
seemed very unfair at 25, having
Oh
no
yeah.
symptoms. And I was very angry at my sister for basically causing this and making this happen.
Mm.
I have a slightly different opinion on that now, that she actually literally saved my life. But that's not
Yeah.
how you think at the time when you're about to go in and have this major surgery. So, yeah, that's basically what happened. I went in, I had an echocardiogram, and basically they just hit the panic button and said, this is the end for you if you don't immediately do something about this. And there was no time to process. It wasn't like I'll think about it for a while. I actually saw the first cardiologist, and he explained to me the procedure.
Mm.
He said, "This is what we have to do. You must go and have this procedure." And I was horrified, and my mum was there with me, and
Oh,
she was in shock as well. And
yeah.
he just kind of showed us all these blown up photos of surgery gone bad,
Oh
like
wow.
of infections and heart valves not going properly. And he said, "There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Just make sure that this doesn't happen to you." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "That's not helpful. Why are you showing me all this stuff and then saying, just because he's covering himself?" So he's saying, "Be aware of this and this and this and this. These are all the things that can happen. Just make sure it doesn't happen to you." But there's nothing you can do to prevent that.
Yeah.
So that was he. A lot of surgeons have very bad bedside manner. So
Mm.
we left that consult just being in shock. And there was another cardiologist that worked in his building. And I said, "No, I'm not going to go with this guy. I want another opinion." So he said, "Well, you can go and see this other guy if you want, but he's going to tell you the same thing. So, he's not as experienced as me. He's not as old as me, so on and so forth." But I was like, no, I'm going to go and see this other guy. So I went and saw this other surgeon. His name was David Andrews,
Mm.
brilliant man. And he sat down with me and explained the same sort of things, but he was a lot more reasonable and gentle about it. and he's basically saying, this is the situation that you're in. You have to have complete resection and removal of your entire ascending aorta and your aortic semilunar valve. The procedure is called a Ben Tall procedure, as in I'm quite tall, my name's Ben. Ben Tall, that's the name of which my mum thought was hilarious until she realised she was going to be up for one too, and then it wasn't anywhere near as funny.
And Ben, how tall are you on that note? Sorry to interrupt you, so our audience knows.
I am 189 centimetres, so 6'3 3/4. And I was actually this tall when I was 12 years old, and I'm now 40-something, 48, 47. And this is one of the things with Marfan's is that you grow, your bones are elongated. This is called arachnodactyl digitalis, or spider hands. So your limbs are elongated and the connective tissue is not generally very strong. And I've had a lot of muscle pain. I've got some quite deformed ligaments and things in my feet and toes. I'm blind in one eye. Well, I can see colour, but I don't see very well because the connective tissue holding the lens in place is slightly detached, and that causes problems too. But, I was born like this, so I don't know any different. And I've just learned to function with a slightly compromised body. And I used to be very angry about it, and now I've just come to accept it and learn to get on with it. So, it was kind of a weird and winding path. But that's what led me to then. And then David, this surgeon, he said to me, you need to have this surgery. It needs to be done immediately. You've got about 3 months to live. And I said,
wow,
I'm not going to do this. I need time to. Okay, so David said to me, you've basically got a very little amount of time. You need to do this immediately. And I said, no. I said, I need to think about it. And he said, well, okay, that's fine. So I got up to leave and he said, hang on. You just have to sign this form on the desk. And I said, I've just told you that I need time to think about it. I'm not signing anything now. I'm not going to go into the procedure. And he said, no. You don't understand. You're signing this so you understand that I've given you this information and that you've got a very short amount of time to live. And so if you die in the next couple of days, that I'm not liable for that. And I was like,
responsible?
Yeah, exactly. So he wasn't going to be responsible. So, and I remember being shocked and kind of turning to him and think, I said to him, is it really that, am I really in that much trouble? And he said to me, mate, I don't think you're going to make it down the elevator back to your car in the car park. That's why you're needing to sign this paper for me right now.
Wow.
And so I signed it, and that's when I was like, oh my God, I'm in a lot of trouble here and I don't really have a choice. So I had to go ahead, and I had to, it was the 18th of April, 2005. That was the nearest date. And so he put it in, and that was the date I was operated on. And it was a massive procedure, and they have to cut you open. So they cut you from your neck to the top of your stomach. They basically break your sternum. They open your chest cavity. They break all your ribs. You're on a heart-lung machine. They literally have to stop the blood to your brain and to your legs while they physically cut out all the pieces of your heart and put new pieces in. And then they can only do that by dropping your body temperature down so low that clinically you're dead for a certain period of time. And then they've got to restart everything, and then they have to bring you back to life. And that's a lot of the people don't survive that part of the procedure. So I took quite a long time to come back, apparently. But I did. Yeah, I did. So it was very traumatic. And I woke up in the ICU, and I remember having leads and tubes and things beeping and all this kind of, and you're very disorientated, you're very drugged up. And I remember the nurse, once you wake up, they make you move your arms and legs to see if your body's still working properly and if your brain is actually working properly. And I could move my arms and I could move my legs, and I could communicate with them. So they thought everything was fine. There was no problems. And they took the tube out of my throat. And I was kind of trying to move my limbs. Now, the backstory I didn't put in about this was my main desire, what I wanted to be in my life, was a professional musician. I played the guitar from when I was about 10 years old till forever, basically. So when I did the panel beating and spray painting, really what I really wanted to do was be a professional musician. And one of my biggest fears about having this surgery was that something was going to happen to my body and I wasn't going to be able to go back and play music. So unfortunately for me, or fortunately for me, maybe that's exactly what happened. So I could move my arms and legs and all that kind of stuff, but my left hand was like a cerebral palsy hand. I couldn't move it. I could move the arm, but I couldn't move the hand. And so it was like kind of like this. And I had to point this out to the nurses, and they were in shock. And they were I remember her specifically standing behind me and going, "Oh my God," which is not really what you want to hear at that point. But basically, what they thought is, okay, he's had brain damage, he's had a stroke, something's happened to him. So they rushed me off for a cervical and cranial MRI on my brain, and that all came back inconclusive. It didn't show anything. Wow. So they were like, well, we're not really sure what happened there, but you still can't move you can move your arm, but you just can't move your hand. Now, as a guitar player, this is the fingering hand, right? So this is the hand that's really important that you can actually use it if you're right-handed. So that was pretty much the end of the world for me. And so I was very angry and bitter then about why I'd survived the surgery if I couldn't play music anymore. I thought that for years. Like, it takes about 2 years to recover from that bent toe procedure. That's about how long it takes for the anaesthetic to wear off. And it takes you that long to get your life back. Yeah. So I was just angry and pissed off, and I didn't see why I was still alive. And I was really angry at my sister. I was angry at my mum. I was angry at everyone, and I wasn't getting better. Nobody really knew how to help me. So anyway, I recovered. I got out of hospital, and I kind of went, and they just thought magically it might just improve and come back. But of course it didn't. So I started to investigate, and after about a year and a half maybe, I went back to my cardiothoracic surgeon and said, look, something's happened to my hand. I need some help because it's not getting better. I don't know what to do about this. And he said, well, look, Ben, I'm really sorry that this has happened to you. It is a risk with surgery. I don't know what to suggest. He said, I've got a friend that's a hand surgeon. He can probably help you. You should go and see him, and maybe he can come up with something that that is going to help you. He said, I'm really sorry I saved your life. Yes, you lost your hand, but that was the trade-off. And I said, okay, fair enough. I'll go and see this other guy. So I went and saw this guy. He was a surgeon in the city, and he did a consult with me, and he said to me, look, this has obviously happened from the surgery. Yeah. He said, your hand is cold and numb. You can't move your fingers. So I'll operate on you if you want, but I don't know. I if you want to try, let's give it a go. And I said to him, there's no way in hell you're going to operate on me. I just had major open heart surgery, and surgery has caused this. It's not that likely that surgery is going to fix this. And he said, yeah, I agree. Just a suggestion. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. But no, I probably wouldn't do it either. So, and he said to me, your hand is cold and numb. You have a nerve problem. Go and see this neurologist. I've got a friend in Subi who does blah, 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 blah. He's a neurologist. So off I went to see this neurologist. And I went to see this guy, and again, he didn't really know what had happened. So he said, well, obviously something has happened. He said, we got to start again. We're going to do a full investigation because it was getting on to 2 years now after the surgery. So he said, okay, we'll start again. We'll do another brain X-ray, a cervical cranial MRI. I'll do a shock test through the nerve so they run a current through the nerve from the neck to the shoulder, shoulder to the elbow, elbow to the wrist, wrist to the tips of the fingers. If they can see a break in the current, then they know that there's a nerve problem somewhere there. The problem with that is it is a very prehistoric test, and you have to have a very big issue for them to pick it up.
I see.
So he did all these tests, and it all came back inconclusive. Yeah. So I was none the wiser, and I didn't know what to do, and I wasn't getting better. And so I got to the end of that, and, he said to me, look, we've done the test. We haven't found anything. I think you might be being a bit of a hypochondriac. Just get on with your life kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And I was obviously pretty pissed about that, Tracy. And he didn't say to me, oh, by the way, I've got a friend who does blah, 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 blah. Go and see this person. He just like, well, that's it. We looked at it, couldn't find it. Nothing wrong with you. Get on with it.
So just accept
and that's not what I wanted to hear, because I wasn't getting better. I didn't know what to do. So I kept investigating it further, but the Western medicine thing had kind of run its course. So I went to chiros, a bit of treatment that didn't really help. I went to physios, that didn't help. I went and saw my mum, who was an osteopath of many, many, many years. She couldn't really help me either. She thought it was a brachial plexus problem, like a pinch in the nerve here at the neck, but it wasn't improving. So, I was very angry. I didn't know what to do, and I was sitting around very depressed. I was living in Fremantle all the time, and I had a friend around the corner. He's a Chinese guy, and he's also a guitar player. His name was Tim, and we hung out together for a long time. And he came around one day, and he said to me, "Look, Ben, you need to be able to play again. You've tried all these different things. You've tried physio and chiro. You've seen this doctor and that doctor. Maybe it's time to go and try. Why don't you go and try acupuncture?" And I thought that it's a very bizarre thing to say, because even though he's Chinese, I don't think he'd ever had acupuncture.
Oh,
So
right.
I don't know why he suggested that to me.
Yeah.
But I remember specifically saying to him, expletive, get out of my house, is what I replied to him. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't think it was reasonable. I thought if that was a reasonable form of therapy or medicine, surely one of these doctors with all these letters after their name would have suggested that to me. But they didn't. So I was not receptive to that at all. So when he said that, I just rejected it totally. I'm like, what a joke and a waste of time. Anyway, so he left the house. That was fine. And I sat around very angry for a couple of days thinking about what he'd said. And I thought, well, I don't know what else to do, man. Maybe I'll go and try this and see. Like, it's not going to help me, but I'll go and try and see. So I found this guy who was a lecturer. He was a white guy, Aussie guy. He was a lecturer at the Australian College of Natural Medicine, which is now called the Endeavour College of Natural Health. Anyway, he was a lecturer there. He had a clinic out by the airport. Lawrence Galish was his name. And he said to me, I went to see him. I told him my case. I told him my story. He said, well, let's try and see. We'll give it a course of treatment and we'll see if you improve. And that's what I'm going to suggest. And I said to him, no, Lawrence, I'm not going to do that because this isn't going to help me anyway. Right. So I'll give you one treatment. And if it helps me, I'll come back. But if it doesn't help me, then I'm not coming back. Yeah. He said, yeah, okay, that's fine, whatever. So he took me into the room, talked to me about yin and yang and qi and blood and all these things. I didn't understand what he was talking about at all. I look at the tongue, feel the pulse, and I thought this is kind of weird, And anyway, he got me on the table and he put some needles in. I don't even think he needled anything around my hand at all. I think he put some around my neck. I'm going back 20 years here, so I can't really remember. Some around my ankle, some on the opposite foot. I think that was it. And anyway, I laid there, had the 40 minutes for the treatment, however long it was. He came in, took the pins out. He took me out to reception. I paid the bill, and he said to me, I'll see you next week, Ben. And I said, no, you won't, Lawrence. I'll decide that. And he said, yeah, okay, that's fine, whatever, no problem. Anyway, I got back in my car, and I was driving back to Fremantle where I was living. And it was an automatic car, so I could drive with the right hand. The left hand just kind of supported the wheel. And I was driving back to my car, and I was starting to get some feeling in my left hand on the bottom of the steering wheel. Wow. And I remember driving back and parking in the driveway, and I must have sat in the car for an hour feeling the steering wheel with my left hand, with my hand that was like this, and now it was kind of more like this. And this was a bit warm, and there was a bit more feeling there. And I was so mind blown that this guy had managed to do something. That all the so-called experts with all their letters after their name, they couldn't help me. Well, they saved my life, but they couldn't help me with the hand thing. And I was just because I was so pessimistic and negative going into this consult with Lawrence. Anyway, I got out of the car. I went inside. I called him up. I said, book me in for 7 more. He wanted me to come once a week for 8 weeks. I said, done, fine, let's do it. And so I went once a week for 8 weeks. That was his treatment plan. And my hand literally went from this to now being able to move. And I still have a bit of numbness and some cold, and it's probably never going to be perfect, but I can play guitar again. And I didn't have any money then either. So I kind of ran out of money. I was on the dole. I wasn't working because I wasn't that well. And I went into thinking, okay, I can't afford to pay him for any more treatment, but I still need to worry about improving my hand more. Yeah. So I thought, I'll go and study this. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'll go and study it because I want to learn how to improve my hand further with acupuncture because that's the only thing that's helped me. So that's why I went to study Chinese medicine. and acupuncture, and only for that reason. And I kind of got 2 years into the course and realized it's not just about your journey to fix your hand. If you can help other people that no one else can help, that's a pretty awesome talent to have. And so I didn't realize that was going to kickstart me studying for the next 13 years, but that's actually what happened. And I realized that, as I got more and more into study and became more academic, I actually did like it and I was good at it. Even though the sciences I hadn't done at school, I found that really difficult. But now I had a reason and a passion. Yes. And it wasn't like being at school where I just didn't care. I didn't think it was interesting. I was bored out of my mind. I had no interest in learning that stuff. But now this is very different. So, I studied for 13 years, become an acupuncturist. I did a double degree in nutrition as well. And then I went on further and did a master's in Chinese herbal medicine. So I became very academic at the end, which is very ironic because that's not how my life started out at all. But that's the reason why I became an acupuncturist and not a spray painter and powder beater.
Yeah. What a story, Ben. There's one thing I wanted to ask. You mentioned something that you were in denial when you first got this news. And I think for a lot of us, when we do hear something, very traumatic, there could be a health scare, or there's, something traumatic going on, or it could be the end of a relationship, or there's always these signs that pop up. And a lot of us, we stay in denial. I'd love to know for you, at what stage did that change? At what stage did you accept, like, this is where I'm at in life and I can either continue to ignore it or I can grab the bull by the horns and do what needs to be done?
Yeah, I think it took me quite a long time to work that out, but I've come to learn that in any situation that you're in, there's always positives. And that isn't always that clear at the time. So when it was all doom and gloom and I literally thought I was going to die, and then I had to scale a mountain with open heart surgery, and that was a full 2 years to recover and the rest. You don't feel like there's anything to learn at that point, right? But if I didn't do that, and that was the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me in my life by far, there's no way I would have ended up studying Chinese medicine and acupuncture, because no one in my family does that. Like, it's a very abstract thing for Westerners to do. And most of us that are, Caucasian or don't have a Chinese background need some sort of full-on traumatic experience like that to go and get the motivation to study that. So I think in any situation, it doesn't matter, particularly with health, when you get such a bad diagnosis, you also need to be aware that there are many ways of healing the body. And just because you get told something by a medical specialist, like the first, don't let them label you, because Western medicine is very good. Allopathic is very good medicine at labeling people. And once you have that, doctors are very professional people, medical doctors, and they will put a stigma on a patient, and you'll carry that forever. Unless you can actually be brave enough to seek out other forms of therapy, or go, well, actually, maybe that isn't how it is. Or maybe it is how it is, but I need to find an alternative to help me, because the Western medicine isn't going to be the be-all and end-all. So, and I think even if you have a traumatic breakup, or, your husband or your wife leaves you, there is always a positive to take from that later on down the track, but it's not necessarily going to be apparent at the time. And it all seems like doom and gloom, but in my experience, that isn't how the world works. So you never get, what's the saying, the bigger the person, the bigger the cross to bear. Right. Yes. So I was doing this because I was able to handle it, but I didn't know that until I had the challenge. And I think that everyone gets stuff that they're going to deal with in their life, which is not going to break them, but they've got to be able to rise to that, and they've got to find a way through that. Just knowing that it's not going to be clear what the benefits are at this point. You just need to put one foot in front of the other and just get through the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, knowing that in time, your life will improve. And I've seen that true in the clinic, now being a clinician for 13 years. I see that very, very often in people's life, because a lot of what I'm doing obviously is about medicine. And this is something that my mother taught me. She said, the things that you say to patients are much more profound than the treatment that you give them. Quite often that actually is the truth. Now, if someone comes in with a structural problem, I need to be able to help them, but they remember what I say. And sometimes, the psychology has to come in. And if someone needs to have a moral boost just off the things that I say, that's the therapy right there, right? Super important, because, words are powerful. And when you
Yes.
hear them from people that are very qualified in their field, if they're not the right words for you and that cuts you down, well, then you're in a lot of trouble because you believe that as being the truth. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not the all-knowing God of Chinese medicine or nutrition or herbs or whatever, and no one is. And this is the same if you're an endocrinologist or you're a rheumatologist. They don't know everything about their field of medicine. No one does. And that's really, really important to remember. So you don't disregard the things that they say, but you be aware that, they're giving you an opinion based on their life experience of what they think is the right thing to do. That isn't necessarily going to be the truth. So I would always encourage everyone to, especially in the world of health, to be a bit more open. And if something that you've been given or prescribed isn't working for you and doesn't resonate, don't necessarily disregard it totally, but understand that there are many ways of healing the body. And so maybe your job is to investigate some of those. And I can guarantee you nutrition will be a part of that, no matter what your condition is or how you're involved. Nutrition is the one thing that has the impact on every single body system.
Do you mind to expand a bit more on that, please, Ben, on nutrition? Because I think that's something I underestimated in my own health journey. I mean, it's, I think it's kind of obvious, but it's not. Just how important nutrition is and how much it impacts every single part of you and your mind and the way you function on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a good point, Tracy. So 100%. So when I build treatment plans in here for a patient, right, I give them a course of acupuncture, I give them herbs. Acupuncture might be once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever they need, plus the herbs. And the idea is that you're moving the blood, you're retraining the brain, and you're getting them to the point that their internal organ function is starting to be restored. Now, at that point, what the patient's job is to do is to start to take over with nutrition. They've got to learn to be their own doctor and pick up because I don't want to see patients forever, right? And the only way I can do that is if they bring nutrition into their world. They have to be able to manage their health, understanding that food is medicine, and food can be something that rejuvenates your body, or it can put you into an early grave, and that's just the reality. So I really put a lot of emphasis, and that's why the name of this clinic is too long and lengthy, the Natural Medicine and Nutrition Clinic. But I needed to also have nutrition in the title because I need people to understand that this is the way that you get your health back, and this is the way that you regenerate your health. This is the way that you maintain your health only for the rest of your life. And if you're not prepared to do that, well, then, you're going to dealing with health practitioners forever. So nutrition is absolutely the most essential thing in life because it does affect every body system, and no one is immune to that. Every single person on the planet needs to understand that.
And Ben, what would your advice be to someone? Because I think a lot of people, they feel like they're almost too far gone. Like, I'm too overweight. I hate exercising. They're just so fixed in their ways of, eating 2 bags of crisps on the couch every Friday and Saturday. What would your advice be to someone who does have that mindset that they are almost too far gone and they're just going to keep going as they are?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've never seen someone who's too far gone, and I've seen some pretty unwell people. I think that it does come down to see, if you think you're too far gone, that's a defeatist attitude, right? The body is remarkable in its ability to heal, and it doesn't matter how far down that path you are. It's never too late. The time to start is now. Better was yesterday, but now is better than not at all. So, and I'll give you an example, all right? And this is one I use in the clinic often because it just kind of makes sense. The body is always trying to heal. Your job is to give it the building blocks that it needs to repair its organs so you can then fix things. If you cut your finger, right, I don't have to think, I need to go through mitosis. I need to go cells to have to divide. I'm going to need calcium and zinc and magnesium. No, you don't do any of that. The body just heals. Right.
Yeah,
so and it knows how to do that naturally. So, I can put things in the way of that cut and mess it up. Like if I put a lot of processed colouring or flavouring or sugars or dirt or whatever, then that's going to be a problem and I'm not going to heal my body. But if you give it what it needs, you leave it alone, it'll fix itself. So I do hear that a lot. And I mean, the only people I can't help really are the ones that don't want to help themselves.
Yes.
And I've sort of learnt over time not to waste my time or their money and energy in the clinic, because if someone doesn't want to get better and they want me to do all the healing, well, that's not a good plan. That means you're making me responsible for your health and you're not willing to take charge of it yourself. And so this is the reason that you are where you are. And if you want to continue doing the same thing where you're going to get the same result you always got, you've got to be brave to make change. You have to be brave. to actually accept that the choices that you've made in the past have led you to where you are right now, today, right? So if you're going to make different choices tomorrow, you're going to sow seeds. So in 3 months' time, you're going to be a different person, or 6 months' time, or a year, however long it takes. You're not going to fix a 20-year nutrition problem in a week or even a month. It doesn't happen like that. So, teaching people the basic steps and the basic foundations of what I call evergreen diets, which are the diets that have been around for thousands of years. They're not flash in the pan stuff, right? They don't go out of date. They're the way that humans have eaten for thousands of years. This is the way that you get your body back. And it really is quite simple and logical. And everyone knows this, but they don't get reminded of it. So it's minimal processed foods. It's not having artificial colours and flavours. It's basically having food that God created or that grows from the land. It's not when humans interfere and try and modify it and make it more technical. That is not food anymore. Your body doesn't recognise it as food. So you go back to the simple stuff, and that's how you get your body sorted.
So would you say the first step would be to kind of, some people can't go cold turkey straight away, just slowly cutting back on, like, if someone drinks, I knew a girl who used to have 6 Red Bull a day. Like, if you're that extreme, would you suggest maybe just cutting things back slowly so your body doesn't go into freak out mode?
Exactly. So 50%, if someone comes in smoking 40 cigarettes a day, I say, okay, that's fine, aim for 20. Do you think you can do 20? Well, yeah, probably. Okay, well, then that's where you start. If you're eating 4 bags of chips a week, you've got to cut it down to 2. You've got to at least see some little change, because you're not going to see results otherwise. So whatever it is that you're doing, that's a very good point. I mean, you just start with a micro amount, and you don't have to try and reverse everything in a week or 3 weeks, especially if it's long term. You will shock the body doing that. So you just need to start to scale it back, and just make little changes. Little changes from little things, big things grow. That's how it works.
Definitely. And Ben, is there one thing you would say or share that people should absolutely just not eat? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, any kind of fast food is not what I consider food, so that's the big one. But basically, it's processed sugars. In America, you're thinking more about the high fructose corn syrup, like the stuff that just your body does not recognise as food, and it's a neurotoxin. It's bad for your nerves. It's bad for your cell. It's bad for everything. But basically, if you can get, there's about 3 main things. One of them is refined sugars, artificial colours, and artificial flavouring. Right, so your body doesn't recognise these, and to try to be able to process that uses up a lot of energy. So if you think about, if you're putting synthetic products into your body, synthetic chemicals, you need to be able to try and deal with that with your magnesium and your calcium and your zinc and your boron and all the different minerals that you need to actually detox. And guess what that means? It means you've got nothing left to regenerate your bones and your thyroid and your kidneys and your liver and your spleen and your thymus and so on and so forth. So there is always a price to pay. And, why not put food into your body that's going to actually nourish your body and give you energy, rather than food or a food-like substance into your body that's just basically going to strip all the minerals out and leave you more weak and deficient than when you started.
What I've noticed from my own health journey is obviously the cleaner I eat, and that, don't get me wrong, I still have a treat every now and then. But when I do, like if I do have a takeaway, oh my gosh, I literally get sick from it. Like your body gets used to having all that goodness. And then when you do put it, not that I eat McDonald's or anything like that. I'm trying to think what I've had as of late. Maybe fish and chips, for example. You just honestly feel so gross from it.
And so that's really, really beneficial, I think. So there is another saying that says all things in moderation, including moderation itself. And it means, you're not a nun and I'm not a monk, right? No. So you're not going to do the right thing all the time. That's not realistic, because you're going to have birthdays, there's going to be anniversaries, there's going to be weddings, there's going to be, kids, but whatever. You need to be able to break the rules occasionally. And sometimes you're going to go out and have 16 wines when you probably shouldn't, because it's Christmas night. What are you going to do? Not have fun? But what you need is a contingency plan to be able to get back on track quickly. And that will basically be, for me, what I tell my patients is about fasting to burn out the sugar and any of the processed stuff, over the next couple of days, and making sure you're hydrating yourself with good quality salt and water, do magical things. And then you can use some very simple herbs like turmeric, like dandelion. These are herbs that are anti-inflammatory that are really going to help the liver. And then if you want to get more antioxidants in, you're going to use frozen berries and that kind of thing if they're not in season, fresh and frozen. That's totally fine. So there are ways of getting around that because I used to eat a lot of rubbish too. I didn't grow up. I grew up eating very clean when I was young, but when I got to about 17 or 18, I went away from all the family stuff. I didn't want to know about it. I had a gutful, so I went and ate Hungry Jacks 3 times a week and didn't eat much McDonald's because I preferred Hungry's. But that was I drank a lot of Coke and I did all that stuff. But then I started to feel really terrible. And then I remembered at about age of 23, 24, I kind of gave all that up and went, yeah, no, that's not how I want to. And even now, when I go out to a restaurant, even if it's a good restaurant, it's not home-cooked meal. It's not the oils that I like. It's not the flavorings that I'm used to. And I suffer for it the next day, even if it's good quality food. So, and there are ways around that. And one of the things that I do is take digestive enzymes. So digestive enzymes after you eat will actually process a bit of the food for you and make your body run better overall. So there are little tricks that you can utilize because you can't be good all the time and that's not realistic.
No, definitely. And you mentioned earlier salt and water. Is that just like normal salt or table salt, or what would you recommend there to stay hydrated?
So there's salt and there's salt. Salt is one of the most important things on the planet because salt is minerals in essence, right? So salt, when they mine it out of the ocean, has about 84 different minerals in. 84. Oh. What happens is that you start to strip them out and you sell them to industry. Okay, so the iron goes, the magnesium goes, the molybdenum goes, the iodine goes, all that gets stripped out. And then what you end up with is sodium and chloride. So you've now got 2. And that's table salt. So they give salt its salty flavour, and that's the really poisonous, problematic salt that's going to raise blood pressure and harden arteries and do all that kind of thing. But that isn't the way that nature produces salt. So, this started to be a problem because we started to see like a lot of problems, especially in the 80s and the 90s. People started to develop thyroid issues. So in their infinite wisdom, what did the food companies do? They put iodine back into the salt. So now you see iodized salt, right? So now you have sodium, you have chloride, and you have iodine, but you're still missing 81. You've only got 3. Yeah. So that isn't going to replenish the body, right? Iodine was already in the salt. They took it out, and then they had to put it back in.
I see.
So table salt is terrible for you. Celtic salt is really good. Pink Himalayan salt is really good, or just any kind of unrefined Australian sea salt. That's what you want to be having. You want to have a full mineral spectrum salt. I mean, we're very closely associated to salt into the oceans, which is why when you cut yourself, if you ever licked your blood, it tastes salty. It doesn't taste sweet, right? Yeah. So salt is really important. If you've sweated a lot, like you might go to the gym, you see your shirt stain and you see the marks on the skin or on the shirt. That's salt coming out of your body. So magnesium's a salt, potassium's a salt, chloride's a salt. These are all salts that you need to have in your body. So salt has gotten a really bad rap along with fat going back to about the 1950s. But salt is essential to life. And even people with kidney problems, I think that to regenerate knees and kidneys and lower backs, salt is essential. And salt is the flavour of the kidneys in Chinese medicine. That's how closely associated it is, right? So this is a really, really important thing. It's only the modern thinking that we've demonised salt and made it a terrible thing. But if you go back to Roman days, salt was so incredibly valuable, soldiers used to be paid in salt. That was worth money. That's how they got paid. Yeah, because it's super important. So don't fear salt, fear poor quality salt.
Yeah. So Celtic and pink Himalayan, you'd mix with water?
These are the 2 best, yeah. So if you have a litre of water, I will just get a pinch and put it in the water. And it'll actually take the water a bit more sweet. It'll hydrate you better because salt is electrolytes too, right? So this is the basis of all these rubbish Powerade, Gatorade, sugary drinks.
I was about to ask you about that.
So why have any of the synthetic flavours when you can just put salt in the water and it will hydrate you a lot better? So it shouldn't taste like salt water. If it does, you put way too much salt in. It'll actually make it taste a little bit sweeter.
Right.
Very simple to look after your adrenal system. Yep.
So you're not a fan of like electrolytes from like a health store or anything like that? You just rather salt instead?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's what I do. People want to spend money on that stuff and buy the brands. Well, I guess so. They can do that if they want, but why bother? Why not just get them from a more natural source?
Yeah.
People do whatever they want, but for me personally, that's what I do for my family and for my body. I just always make sure you salt food until it tastes good. That's the
Yeah.
trick, right? So we've all anyone who's 40 or 50 or 60, generally these people have been brought up to say that salt is terrible for you and you shouldn't have it because the doctor told them that in 1963, and they're still sprouting that misinformation. And that is misinformation, by the way. Salt is essential for life. Without salt, everyone's dead. So a bit like cholesterol. It's not a bad thing at all. But don't get me started on that. So yes, just have some salt. It's important.
I would love to talk about cholesterol if you can.
Okay, let's get into it then.
Can you share with us, I guess, from those generations, there are some misconceptions around fats, around salt. Would you mind to touch on cholesterol as well? Because I know there was a time where eggs were bad for you. It increased your cholesterol. What's your view on those things?
So yeah, look, I mean that's a can of worms right there, but let's discuss it a little bit because it is important. So cholesterol is made in the liver predominantly, but every single cell of the body needs cholesterol. So let me just talk quickly about the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol, because this is really quite a bad misnomer. There's actually about 12 or 14 different types of cholesterol. There isn't two.
Oh, wow. I didn't
So
realize.
yeah, there is many, many, many. So good cholesterol or HDL cholesterol, high density lipoprotein, is called good cholesterol because it gets made in the liver predominantly, and when you have it in excess, it gets deposited back into the liver where it came from. Low density lipoprotein or LDL cholesterol or bad cholesterol is called bad cholesterol because when you have it in excess, it doesn't get put back into the liver where it comes from, it gets deposited into arteries. So that's when you see the cholesterol starting to build up like around the pipe. Now, even that is not actually the truth, right? So why? Because remember, the body's smart, right? The body doesn't just do idiotic things for no reason. The human body is very, very intelligent. So what happens when you have arteries that get inflamed? Inflammation is the problem, and cholesterol is a repairer of the body, a bit like calcium. So if you're seeing your arteries getting calcified and filling up with cholesterol, it's because you have an inflammation problem. You don't have a cholesterol problem. Your body is trying to patch that up and strengthen the arteries, which unfortunately makes them less flexible because arteries are supposed to vasodilate and vasoconstrict. They're supposed to get bigger and smaller. But if that's full of cholesterol, that's very hard for it to do. It shouldn't be full of cholesterol, the artery. But it will be if you're having a very acidic diet or you have a diet that has a lot of, processed synthetic foods, you're going to create inflammation in the body, and your body's going to need to use some sort of mud or cement. We call it cholesterol, but that's the repairer of the body. So that's what's actually going on. So cholesterol is not the demon that it's made out to be. Cholesterol is the basis of how nerve cells function. So every nerve cell in your body is surrounded by a thing called a myelin sheath, and that is basically cholesterol. 70% of your brain is made of cholesterol.
Oh, wow.
Right, it's this massive component. So when you start seeing drugs, and this is a link between the drugs that cut down cholesterol and people getting Alzheimer's and dementia.
I see.
It's not a miscellaneous thing. This is a documented thing in medical literature. You can look it up. So that's why I don't like statin drugs, and I don't like the drugs that cut down cholesterol because they cause a lot of problems. And there are other ways of dealing with it. So I've got to be a little bit careful here. People need to do their own research, but I think that we've got a real panic about trying to keep cholesterol levels low, and the evidence actually says if you look into it, having cholesterol too low is far more dangerous than having cholesterol that's high, because every single cell of your body needs cholesterol. So anyone that studied biology, you will see a cell membrane. So the membrane separates the inside of the cell from the outside of the cell, and one of the components of that membrane that makes it strong and rigid is cholesterol. You have too much, the cell's very rigid, it doesn't work properly. You have too little, it's very floppy and it falls apart. So just having the right amount is super important, but it's another example of why cholesterol is so incredibly important, and it has a very bad name, and it doesn't do all the terrible things that it's pertained to do. It's essential for life.
Yeah. And Ben, I guess, with Western medicine, the easy fix is to just go on, statins, or there's, just take this pill and it'll fix it. Do you advise that people sort of explore natural medication and nutrition to kind of try rectify that? I know some cholesterol is genetic. what would your advice be? And again, obviously, everyone needs to do their own research. But from your point
Yeah,
of view,
100%. Yeah, look, I mean, I think that understanding what medicine to use at what time. I mean, my life was a very good example, right? So I'm not anti-Western medicine at all. I think it's absolutely essential. Without Western medicine, I'd be dead.
yeah,
But I also learned that because that's what I needed to fix my heart, but it didn't help my hand. So I got a very good schooling in the right medicine at the right amount of time. Now, there's a couple of things that Western medicine is far better than anyone else at by a country mile. One of them is traumatology, right? So if I get hit by a bus and I'm bleeding out, I don't want an acupuncturist to come along, stick needles in my neck. I need to go to surgery and get sewn up. That's what I need to do.
totally.
So traumatology and diagnostics. So in terms of doing CT, MRIs, ultrasounds, blood work, Western medicine is phenomenal at that. But in terms of, they're really the two things. In terms of maintaining the body and the health long term, they're not very good at that. And it's not really what the medicine's about. They're very good at treating symptoms. They're not terribly interested in finding the cause and trying to fix that because there's no money in that. And unfortunately, that's the reality. There's a lot of money in sickness. There's not a lot of money in health. So, as a natural medicine practitioner, my job always, when I'm talking about restoring organ function, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get people to fix themselves at the source so they don't need to have ongoing treatment forever. They might come in for maintenance, and I advise everyone to do that. But you shouldn't need to have a lot of therapy all the time to try and fix a problem. Otherwise, you're just putting another Band-Aid on it. So, it is a good point. I think that understanding what medicine you need when is super, super important.
And Ben, why is it that the acupuncture actually works so well for your hand? Because, like I say, with my family member that you worked with, I won't share too much of who it is, but he had been, he had very high cholesterol, was struggling, and it was for the first time in 3 years, and I'm trying to get emotional on you, that he was actually more himself after he worked with you for a few times. And I would love to know, what is the difference or what makes it work compared to Western medicine?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's an interesting point. One of the answers is that no one really knows how acupuncture works, but I'll give you my theory on it. So, my understanding of it, and from how I've been trained, is it does two things, acupuncture. It moves blood and it retrains the brain. Really, those two things. So, when I say move blood, I mean, if you have a problem with any organ, I can guarantee you 99.9% the problem is that you haven't got the blood supply there. Right. So if you can increase the blood supply to whatever organ it is that's not functioning properly, then you increase the oxygen and the nutrition to the tissue, and then the organ starts to regenerate. So acupuncture is very good at opening the blood vessels. When I'm talking about retraining the brain, that's basically how it works. So if I put a needle in the hand, right, I'm activating a meridian or a nerve pathway that's going to go up to the brain. The brain is going to be stimulated, and the brain is going to open a blood vessel and start to move blood around the body. So I can move blood anywhere in the body, and it's not where the needle goes, right? So, but the needle is the switch that needs to get flicked to allow the brain to be retrained, so the blood can be moved around the body again. And you do that enough times, then you wean off the acupuncture. You don't need to have it forever because your brain is now being retrained, your organ function has been restored, and you don't need to have it anymore. That's how it works.
And as well, if you don't mind me asking, is that why it's so helpful in terms of fertility as well?
100%, exactly that. So it is a way of balancing the hormones, but if you need to send more blood to the uterus or to the ovaries or to the adrenal system, the kidneys, because that's very, very closely associated, or the thyroid, right? So this is all kidney stuff in Chinese medicine. So Chinese medicine, when you're talking about the kidneys, you're talking about birth and growth and reproduction. You're talking about hair on the head. You're talking about lower back, knees, but it's also the hormones. So that's all what we call kidney. That's all about the kidney organ and the kidney channel. And there is a difference. So you have your internal organs, but you also have the access to them, which is the meridians or the nerve pathways on the outside of the body. And so I can affect internal organs by placing needles in a certain position. And I mean, who knows how the Chinese worked that out thousands of years ago, Asian cultures in general, but they did. They did, and this is the only medicine they had to treat literally hundreds of millions of people for thousands of years. Acupuncture, herbs, qigong, tai chi, Chinese dietetics. I mean, the Chinese were very clever. Less so the modern Chinese, I'm not talking so much about them, but the ancients were brilliant. They were brilliant people. Let's get away from Chinese politics for a minute because we're not here to discuss that. But I'm really amazed always at how well acupuncture can work. And even now, being a clinician for more than a decade, I'm still amazed daily in the clinic. And so are patients, particularly the ones that don't buy it and don't think it's going to work. They're my favourite patients, actually, because they give you very, very clear feedback. And this is not something, it's not a faith-based medicine. You don't have to believe in it for it to work. It's not how it works. Not the style of acupuncture that I practice anyway. It's called the balance method. So I don't mind when people come in as a total non-believer because you get the honest feedback. And I'm totally okay with that. But really, it's neuroscience. That's what it is. Put a needle in, nerves being stimulated to the brain opening blood vessels, blood moving around the body. It's not more complicated.
And Ben, may I ask, does faith form a part of what you do?
That's an interesting question, Tracy. I guess it does. I mean, I mentioned a few biblical things. My wife's very religious. I'm not terribly. I do go to church, once a month. I like the community feel of it. I think that's really cool. We go to a Pentecostal church, and I like the music aspect. So there's a lot of singing and music and drumming, and that's really, really cool. I think so anyway. So I follow more of a Taoist theory, which is more of the Asian philosophy, I guess, where you have your personal Tao, which is your own journey, through the world. And then you have, the universal Tao, which is more about do the right thing by people, and all religions really agree on this. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, be a good person, don't be an a-hole. Basically, and all religions really have that in common. And it's just the very extremisms that mess it up for everybody. But I think in essence, it doesn't matter whether you're reading Confucius or the Quran or the Bible, they all have the same kind of principles. And the other one that we haven't gotten into, which I always thought was really interesting, the only other thing that all religions agree on, right? They don't agree whose God is right. They don't. My God's better than yours. Your God did this, whatever. But they all agree on fasting. Think about that for a minute. Isn't that interesting? Why is it in the Quran? Why is it in the Bible? Why is it in the teachings of Buddha? Why is it in Hinduism? Something to it.
Good point.
There's something to it because they can't agree on anything else. But I was always amazed about that, actually.
That's a really good point. I hadn't realized that before. I'm a big fan of fasting. It's really changed my lifestyle, changed my life. I've lost, a lot of weight, but not even the weight aside, just the way I function as a human. It's really had a massive impact.
So fasting and nutrition, I mean, I kind of circumvented a question you had before about the family member, but one of the reasons that I think this person has done so incredibly well is because they took on the nutrition stuff, and they hadn't been given that by anyone else, and I didn't think it was terribly technical, but all I tried to teach is the simplistic stuff, like use your food as medicine, understanding that what you put into your mouth has an effect, a massive effect on the body. So go back to the natural foods. Certain fruits and vegetables are going to regenerate the liver and the kidney and the gallbladder and the spleen and whatever. And the other foods are really going to mess that up. So you've got to understand how that works, and that's how you actually get results. But nutrition, there's no one on the planet that can't benefit from utilizing nutrition in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, definitely. And I have to add as well, because I've done acupuncture before and I hate needles. I'm I don't have a tattoo or anything like that because I'm too scaredy pants. But I actually found it wasn't painful. It was very peaceful, I found. I was obviously very nervous the first time I went because I don't like needles, but it wasn't painful at all. Yeah,
I think most people have that perception because, no one likes needles. They like the effect of it, but they don't necessarily like them. But they also have, most people are also basing that off their experience with a dentist or a GP or going for a vaccine or something. So, yes, it is painful. And one of the main differences is that they're what they call hypodermic syringes are very big in diameter, and they actually have to take out a bit of tissue. That's why it hurts. Acupuncture needles aren't like that. They're very, very thin. They're thinner than your hair. So mainly the ones I use are 0.22 millimeters, which is unbelievably small. They're almost like just a bit of spaghetti kind of thing. So no, it shouldn't be painful. I mean, you are putting needles in, so it can be, depending on how it's done. But if I'm treating someone for pain, I don't want to make it more. They're already in pain. It doesn't take a lot of skill to hurt someone with a needle. It takes quite a lot of skill for them not to feel anything. And, putting people in pain, lights their pain receptors up, and it puts their nervous system on high alert, and they don't tend to get as good a result. So you want people to be calm and feeling good from acupuncture. And that's basically what you described before about just feeling very relaxed, especially people that haven't had it done before. Yeah, they're very surprised. And also for busy business people, right, if you've got to be stressed out and make decisions all day and, you're running a big team or whatever, you don't have that chance where you can just chill out for 30 minutes and not make decisions and not have to think about stuff and not, and arguably that's therapy in itself. I've actually had patients say that to me before. Say, Ben, why should I bother coming here? Like, I get to have a lie down, I get to rest for half an hour, and that's great. But couldn't I just go home and lie on the couch and do the same thing? And I say, well, you can try. Go and try it. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work the same. The needles do something, and I know this because they have come back and reported that to me. But, lying down for 20 or 30 minutes and just resting the body and closing your eyes, you also spare enzymes when you close your eyes. And so enzymes are like your internal battery source. And so just by resting and being able to shut your eyes, this is a way of actually regenerating your body. The needles do things. They do a lot of interesting things because that's not going to retrain your brain. That's why you need the acupuncture. But yes, it shouldn't be painful. But if you haven't had it before, of course you're going to think that. But most people have had their ears pierced or something. It's not really that bad. And for other people that are in chronic pain, whatever tiny little bit of flick that they feel some pain from the needle is nothing compared to what they're dealing with day to day. So, yeah.
No. And like I say, if I can survive it, anyone can, because I hate needles with a passion. Ben, I'd love to ask you about sound and its ability to heal the body.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, there was a guy, a very, very lovely guy, a colleague of mine, who did a sound healing therapy session yesterday morning, which I missed because I had patients. I was spewing about that. But sound has been around for obviously forever, and sound is something with the resonance and the frequency that goes in that affects the brain and the nervous system. And there's even some studies done about sound being able to kill parasites in the body and have really quite a profound effect. So sound, it is something that I try and do in the clinic to play music because I'm quite musical in my background. I really enjoy sound, just like, annoying sound is terrible. Therapeutic sound that relaxes your mind is going to enhance the therapy a lot. So sound is a very old school thing, and it's very, very profound to find their own way. So I tend to like playing some of the Tibetan chimes, the bells that kind of have that certain resonance and frequency, and humans have always used that. And I remember the stories about, in the churches, if you go back 3 or 4 or 5 or 600 years, they didn't used to have pews in churches. So the idea was that the people would go in there and they would lie down, right? They'd lie down and then they'd ring the bells. They'd ring the bells, and that was the sound therapy in an enclosed space. And all the people that would go to church would get to heal their body. And that was all part of the, going there on a Sunday. So Aboriginal people have also used that. So there is sound therapy with the didgeridoo, where they're basically blowing the didge over you. And it is about the sound, but it's also more about the vibration. It's the vibration that actually kickstarts the healing.
I've experienced that. It is amazing. I'm a big fan of sound. And like you said earlier, a lot of business owners, because we go all the time, we don't actually stop. And yes, having a sound healing with the didgeridoo was incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. So I encourage anyone to utilize that. And even in terms of getting home and just putting on calming music, I find that, and there's quite a lot of research on that, about kids with brain damage and how you can actually get their cognition and their brain working much better if you play music. And this has been studied. I think it was Mozart. Almost anything that Mozart has written, if you play that in the background when you're studying, it seems to enhance your brain's function, and you seem to be able to study and retain information better. So, and it was the timing of his music and the brilliance of his music. So maybe you like Mozart, maybe you don't. That's kind of beside the point. The point is that it has an effect on the human body. And so finding the sound that works for you is incredibly important and can be very beneficial for lots of different ways. So I'd look into that if I was listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Ben, you have a wealth of knowledge, and I absolutely love the passion that you have for what you do as well. I'd love to very briefly touch on your business owner journey, and I definitely have to get you back on next year because I still feel like we could chat for a lot longer.
Oh, sure. I'd love to. Yeah. So, look, I mean, natural medicine is a difficult thing to be part of as a business owner. So I've gone through a long journey. Most people that go into this industry, they burn out. Right. So, and even in terms of the study, so something like the statistics are for Chinese medicine, 80% of the students that enroll don't finish at the end. So there's only 20% of people, 1 in 5 people are going to finish the course. And of that 20%, 80% of them are not going to be in business in 5 years. So the attrition rate is pretty massive. Like a lot of industries are like that, but particularly in health, it takes quite a long time for you to get good at it. So you might graduate and get your bit of paper. I mean, I think the first year I graduated, I worked 6.5 or 7 days a week, and I made $18,000. And for the average person, just isn't going to survive on that. You can't pay the rent, you can't buy the food, you can't, it's really difficult. So, upskilling and learning more and studying under better people as you go through, like any industry, I guess, you have to put the effort in to learn more and more. So that was kind of when I was in Melbourne. Then I came back to Perth and I started working in different Chinese medicine clinics. There was one in Scarborough called Scarborough Traditional Acupuncture with a very lovely lady called Trudy Matthews, who I'm very grateful for. I worked with my mum for many years, practicing at home. I worked in a clinic in North Perth. And then that came right up to about 2019 when I decided that I just really wanted to be mine. I had enough experience by then. I'd been in the game for, 10 years by then. And I wanted to practice in the way that I wanted to practice. And I didn't really want to work in someone else's clinic. So, it was kind of a long and arduous journey, and I have to just pay my mother some respect here because I wouldn't be where I have got to without her assistance and her help. She's not here anymore. She's passed away on New Year's Eve of 21, but she was a massive part of my journey. So I'll remember her and respect her, and without her I wouldn't be here. So it's difficult, and she helped me open the clinic in Subiaco, which I've just moved from. So I was there for 3.5 years, and now finally I managed to buy my own place. So I've just bought a clinic in Netherlands, and we're on Broadway now in Netherlands. So that feels amazing to be back. I grew up in Netherlands. I've sort of been here the vast majority of my life. So it feels really good to be back in Netties and be able to work. So look, it's difficult, but it is rewarding. You don't necessarily do it for the money. Some people are very successful at it, and some people, you can do very well out of it if you're dedicated to it. But if you want to help people, I just love what I do, Trace. I most people can't say that, but I genuinely like, not every day. I mean, I get difficult people, and I get people that aren't well, and people, but I feel very blessed in my ability to help people. And if I can help people like me when no one else could help, I mean, what a privilege and an honor that is. So I study more and more all the time the business side, because acupuncture, Chinese medicine, it is a business, right? And this is not taught when you're studying. And most industries will teach you how to get your bit of paper, but they won't really teach you how you're going to be in the industry in 10 years. Because, like I say, 80% of people aren't going to be there after 5 years. And there's no good being there and being absolutely flat broke and hating your life and hating your patients and just being angry. That's not helpful either. So learning the business cycles, and I can only do that by going and studying under other. I have a number of different mentors that I've used over the years, and I paid them an awful lot of money, and fair enough too. And from that, I've managed to learn and build and scale. My dream is to build the biggest natural medicine centre in the Southern Hemisphere. Oh. I know that's my dream, and that is. I've seen how they work in China. I've studied there twice. I know it's possible. They do all this stuff in hospitals. They don't do it in little practices like I have. So if it's good enough for them, I don't know why it's not good enough for us. And we should be able to have that ability, because acupuncture can treat so many things, right? So can herbs, so can naturopathy, so can chiropractic. So we need to make that a bigger part of the medical system, and not just rely on the Western doctors and the pharmaceuticals. They do a great job, and they definitely have their place. But long term, that's not where it needs to be, and we need to muscle in there a little bit. And learning about business and learning about how to actually run a business properly is a huge part. And that isn't taught unless you go and seek out mentors and learn that specifically from people. And you will pay a lot of money for that, but you should, because it's valuable. So,
Brandon is exactly the same. I mean, when I studied my visual arts degree and I did a graphic design and branding diploma, they don't teach you how to run a business at all. And that's why mentors, advisors, coaches are imperative to a successful business journey, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I think if anyone's, about to graduate or thinking about going and studying, you need to bear that in mind. If you want to get good and you want to be around and you want to be relevant and be able to actually help people, you have to, don't just think you can get your degree and then you're done. That's not how it works. That's when you begin to learn. That's not the end. That's right at the beginning. But that isn't the way it's pertained. And, it's important to understand that if you want to, don't reinvent the wheel. Go and find people that excel in your field. Study them. What are they doing? How do I mimic them? You don't copy them, but you use what you can from them and you make it into your own. And that's how you're going to be successful. That's super, super important. And that's in any field, not just in natural medicine.
Definitely agree with that. Ben, thank you for the lovely tribute to your mom as well. I really love that you highlighted, what your mom has done for you, because I think so often we just take for granted what our parents sacrifice, what they do for us. So thank you for making that a part of the podcast as well. To wrap us up, and I don't want to wrap up because I feel like I can chat to you forever. If you had one piece of advice you could give Ben that was just given that diagnosis and that awful news, what would it be?
I would say do more research. Like, never ignore what a medical professional is going to tell you, but be aware that they're not all-knowing gods, and that there are many ways of healing the body. I've got 5, 6 different acupuncture systems that I use. If one doesn't work, I try another one. Right. So when you get told something by a person, understand it doesn't matter how many letters and degrees they have after their name. Don't disregard it. Like, accept what they say, but do your own research. Go and investigate it more. If it doesn't resonate with you and you have a gut feeling that isn't going to work for you, you need to find a system that is going to actually work for you. And there are many ways of healing the body. So that would be the advice that I had to find that out myself anyway, and I did. I just did it in a very roundabout way. It would have been nice to have heard that so I could get on the path more quickly and not be in the wilderness for 2.5 years. But keep investigating, keep studying, keep learning.
And how powerful is it that all that experience that you had has led you right to where you are right now, and how many people's lives that you do? So it whilst it totally sucked at the time, and you did touch on this earlier, it's all kind of worked out exactly how it was supposed to.
Yeah, and that's one of the ironies of life. So when you get a bad card played to you, don't tear your hair out and don't assume it's the end of the world, because you actually don't know what is in store for you down the track. And my darkest day, Tracy, became the greatest gift of my life. How ironic is that? And that is not lost on me either. I think about that actually most days still, even 12, 14 years later, however long it's been. So don't despair. If you've been given a very bad situation, don't make a decision now. Step back, assess it and understand that the future might hold other things. And maybe it's just a kick up the backside you need to inspire you to get to you where you're supposed to be going. You don't know yet. So don't be too reactive about that, even when it seems like it's terrible and it's all doom and gloom, because you never know.
Ben, thank you so much for that beautiful reminder. Where is the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you, or if they want to come and check out your new clinic, where should they go?
Well, if you Google Ben Acupuncture Netherlands, you'll find me. The Natural Medicine and Nutrition Clinic is my clinic. So you will find me on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm all over the place, Tracy. They'll find me. But yes.
Great for your brand.
Exactly. So, I appreciate you having me on a lot. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd love to come on again. Let's look at doing this again next year. That'd be great.
I'd love to, Ben. Thank you so much for all you've shared. And like I say, you have a wealth of knowledge and the passion that you have. And I'm sure your mom would be incredibly proud of everything that you've achieved. So thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.